Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. Bypassing is really a great term. I don't know who invented it. It wasn't that long ago. But the way that I was taught about it from my teachers early on was using spiritual teachings or using view to support fixation. And there's many ways that we can do that and many flavors we can do that in. For instance, if we're hanging in the God realm a lot and we don't like to be around other people who are in pain or who are sick or who are dying because it freaks us out and reminds us of our own mortality, then if some friend comes up to us and says they're feeling a lot of pain, we might say something like, "It's all one taste." That's spiritual bypassing, trying to use the teachings to support your own karmic realm visions. And there's just many, 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 many different flavors that comes in. Another way that could be described would be if you spout teachings to support your fixations, you're basically a blaring advertisement for the fact that you haven't realized those teachings. So bypassing is a way of sounding like you have accomplished something or embodied something that you actually haven't. It's completely conceptual and intellectual and not embodied. Yearning is something I've been talking about with respect to the Gayatri most recently, but you may have heard in some other teachings that we have to get rid of desire. And absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. Those are more transcendental types of traditions that teach that. Yearning and desire are actually the great powers of human life and all life. So we have yearning or desire for lots of different things. We yearn for certain situations, we long for certain people or things, and that's a very great power. That's a very great force, but this is what I like to call objectful desire. In other words, our desire has an object. We have an object of desire. We really, really want a donut, or we really, really want things to be different in the world. Everything here, everything that we experience in our small way becomes more and more expansive as we move towards the absolute or the realized condition. So there's nothing different that's happening here. It's just happening in a more contracted, compacted way here, a less complete way. But when we liberate those emotions or those feelings, they become the enlightened versions of those things. So what is the enlightened version of desire? The enlightened version of desire is that impulse for self-expression that has no object. Objectful desire becomes objectless desire. It's simply that outpouring of expressiveness, of creative expression, that's like a fountain at the heart of reality. And it's impelled by something that is related to the desires that we feel for ordinary things, but it's liberated from the constraint of having to desire something in particular. Yearning is some flavor of desire. I can't quite define what flavor, how it's a little bit different, but it's not unpleasant. Yearning is not unpleasant. And Mayama said that she herself appeared because generations of practitioners longed for a female incarnation of the divine. Their desire for a female incarnation of the divine was so powerful that she appeared, right? She answered their call. Just so, when we practice and we let ourselves feel yearning, particularly we're doing the Gayatri to support more clarity and intelligence being available to humans so that we don't totally self-destruct and destroy everything on our planet more than we already have. Many of us feel a very deep yearning for things to be better in that respect. We yearn to live in a world that is more kind, more sane, where we treat each other and other beings and everything here in a more supportive way that isn't so greedy and destructive. So when we do the Gayatri, because we are trying to support whatever transformations are happening, whatever wisdom is trying to be more revealed here through this destruction, we feel our yearning. We want to feel our yearning because it's part of the power of doing the practice. If we just do the practice like, not feeling anything, it doesn't have nearly as much juice. It doesn't have as much efficacy. It's not as effective as when we just let our desire accompany the practice. All those generations of sannyasins caused Ma to appear. Maybe if we're practicing worldwide with a whole bunch of people, all just unified wanting something similar, we can have some kind of an impact. Over the past 18 months, I've gotten occasional messages from some other spiritual person or teacher telling me they don't think I should be doing what I'm doing. I shouldn't be posting about Gasa. I shouldn't be political. I should raise my vibration. Something like that. Basically, we're here to be ourselves. We're here to be expressive, just like God is being expressive. And I've always been a joiner. Being this engaged is just part of my expression. It's just how I was built. I've always been this way. It feels good to me. Speaking of bypassing, I don't have to put any patina of spiritual transcendence on top of it. God's doing all this. As Ma said, we are the arms and legs of God. So God's out there protesting too. And God's also complaining about people who protest. The message of that is we should just do what our unique dimension is created for. And my unique dimension was created for participation, for being in community and supporting that.
I've been thinking a lot about hell realm and how that shows up for me. When I feel hurt, I can be aggressive or mean back. And I'm trying to feel out when that's actually appropriate and when it's overblown reaction.
It's never appropriate to be mean. Absolutely never. That doesn't mean that we aren't going to be mean, but there's no question when is it appropriate to be mean. It never is. We just learned that behavior. And Jaya Kula, a new student, once said to me, I don't want to be in a community where anyone is ever mean. I was like, well, we're just a random collection of people and some of us are mean. I can't really promise you that, right? However, at some point we understand that's not our destination. Our destination isn't to fine-tune our meanness so that we're appropriately mean. Our destination is to not want to be mean anymore. So I'm not telling you don't be mean. I'm telling you that's not your destination. That's not where we're heading toward together here. And understand that if you're mean back, there's no purpose to that other than remaining in fixation. That doesn't do anything for you or for the other person. It's out of compulsion pretty much all the time. In terms of being aggressive or just being forceful, that has its place. It takes a lot of emotional subtlety to know when being aggressive or being forceful is called for. Different kinds of intensities of relating to people, or there's some appropriateness to all of the different intensities that we can express. Everything from being very, very passive and quiet to yelling at somebody. All of those things have a place at some point or another. But the fundamental definition of meanness is doing something to somebody so they feel as badly as you do. We don't want to be in the condition that we want other people to feel as badly as we do. Although I completely understand why people feel that, but that's not where we're headed. I understand the thing about people asking if you're okay because they don't want to hear that you're not okay. They're basically saying, you're okay, right?
Right.
In that instance, what are we confronted with? We're confronted with a person who can't tolerate feeling other people's pain. If we're in more of a stable condition ourselves, we can feel compassion for that. We might not want to remain that person's friend, or we might want to say something. I think you know I'm not okay, right? But we don't have to do it in a mean way. Because that person is clearly broadcasting that their capacity is limited. Even if someone just says that casually, even if they don't know you all that well, and they say, "You're okay, right?" Or "Are you okay?" Or they just want you to be okay. That's pretty much the message. It's never really an open-ended question. So I don't think it really matters whether they know you well or not, although obviously there's some added layers to that, but I'm not sure that that's ever a great way to start a conversation.
Can you talk a bit about Hungry Ghost Realm?
Sure. So Hungry Ghost Realm is the past focus realm. And there's a little bit of Hungry Ghost in everybody, in all of the realms, because it has to do with a feeling of lack or a feeling of something being missing. And of course, we're all missing something because we're not totally enlightened. There's a little flavor of that in everybody. But Hungry Ghost is a very tricky pattern to really understand well, because a lot of times people think it means that we feel lack and we're trying to fill that lack, or we feel a void and we're trying to fill that void. But it doesn't mean that. It's actually we're feeling a void and we're trying to maintain the feeling of the void by constantly reminding everybody that we're missing something. It's an underlining or a bolding, if you will, of the feeling of missing something, or of being cheated of something, or of not having something that we need. And so it's a way of magnetizing people to us and forming relationships based on a complaint that we're missing something, or have lost something, or are never going to get something that we need. So the image of the hungry ghost in the Tibetan traditions is of someone with this big empty belly and a very narrow throat, very narrow, that they can't actually get the food into their stomach. All of the realm visions represent attempts to become intimate in some way or another. They all represent strategies for trying to be intimate. The hungry ghost strategy is to tell you, you're not giving me what I want. You're not giving me what I need. You're not helping me enough. You're not feeding me enough. You're not loving me enough. And of course, if you tell somebody that in all your different ways, the other person, if they care about you, they're going to try to satisfy you. But you're going to be continually and perpetually unsatisfied, because to be satisfied in that realm vision means that you're going to be abandoned. This continual demand that other people engage with you to try to satisfy you, and that you're never satisfied, that's a way of keeping people close to you. This is how this works. Just like all the realm visions, it's a way of trying to have intimacy, but kind of backfires, like all of them do. They kind of backfire. The most important thing to understand is that people caught up in hungry ghost patterns actually do not want fulfillment, because that represents aloneness, that they're going to be fulfilled and alone rather than fulfilled and with others. But it is the past focus realm, and it will even make a past out of the future. So let's say this is one of your patterns and you're going on a date and you think, that's never going to work out. I'm just going to end up being sad and lonely. You haven't even gone out with a person yet, but you're already making this past to be mournful about out of something that hasn't even happened yet. So it'll make a mournful past out of the future. Whereas human realm's really the future looking realm. Obsessive planning for what's going to happen next. There's this concept in mainstream Hinduism called Kaivalya, which means independence. It is used to describe God being completely independent, but also used to describe the condition of someone who's realized. And whenever I would hear this, I would think, that just sounds so lonely. Right? So there's this idea that if you felt satisfied, then everyone would just go away because there's no more work for them to be doing with you. You don't have a concept or an idea that you could just be together and feel fulfilled You think that relationships are about trying to meet other people's needs and have your needs met. And if your needs are met, then there's no work for the other person to do, and so they're just going to not be there. When someone says, I'm angry at you, or they say, you aren't satisfying me, those are really magnetizing statements. This person that basically said, I can't be your friend anymore, you're still worried that they're angry at you, right? Because the idea that anyone out there, however distant, is going to be angry at us is really hard. And we're going to try to fix that somehow. So imagine that if someone's actually in your life says, I'm angry at you, you're like, really? Why? What can I do? And like suddenly you're in this very intense bond over trying to resolve this. Same thing if someone says, you're not satisfying me. You never make me good food. You're leaving me alone too much. You're not paying enough attention to me. You're being mean to me. Whatever it is. The other person, of course, is going to be, well, how can I fix this? And then again, suddenly you're in this intimacy. You're in this bond of them trying to satisfy you. So what happens in the mind of someone who's trapped in this is if you tell the person, oh, yeah, you did a great job. I feel completely satisfied. Wonderful dinner, wonderful sex, wonderful everything. Then they're going to be like, okay, sayonara. It's not really like that, though. It's nice to just be around people and be content together. That's a thing. My friend Ming had a picture, this really like huge blown up ink drawing. I don't know from what Chinese dynasty, but anyway, it was basically two Taoist friends. They were both sitting on the mountain and then looking out into the distance. They weren't looking at each other. They were just sitting there. And Ming always said, this is my idea of the perfect friendship. That you just sit in contemplation of beauty of the world and nothing needs to be said or done.
On that whole topic, it just makes me think about how to discern in relationship if you're in my hungry ghost fixation or actually being neglected.
It is very hard to discern in certain situations. Very, very hard. When we have certain experiences in life that repeat over and over, they become a little invisible to us. They become a little bit invisible, a little bit harder to suss out when that's happening. And right now, I think you're in a process of trying to suss out what's happening.
I can see that kind of fixation tendency of hungry ghosts, and then especially the abandonment piece. And I just wonder if both of those things can be happening at the same time.
Yeah, they absolutely could. But that doesn't mean that you have to live with the abuse. We all have our karmic stuff going on, but other people are also doing their thing. Just because we have karmic stuff going on doesn't mean that we have to host everything that everyone is dishing our way. And probably you're not going to have total clarity about this situation until you have a little more distance on it. But definitely, I know you're struggling with it. And I have also struggled with this. So I'd really love to be a resource for you if you want that. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.